All right, welcome back. We're on day 9 of our ACT Prep Unit 2, Pre-Algebra 2 topics. We are talking about solving linear equations today. When you're solving linear equations, here's my kind of plan. You look for any operations that you can do on both sides of the equal signs. So you basically want to make sure that you clean up both sides and get each side as simple as possible. Then I call the next step jump. And what that means is if you have letters on both sides, one of them has to jump over and join the other one. It doesn't matter which way you want to go, but you've got to get the x's on the same side of the equal sign. And then you're doing an asymptotic fight move, which means you're trying to get the x alone by undoing what they're doing to the letter. And when you're undoing stuff to letters, you have to do PEMDAS backwards. I call it asymptotic. Okay? Alright, so an algebraic symbols are either constants or variables. A constant is one value, like 2 or 1/2 or 0.08 or pi or square root of 5. A variable may have one or more variables, more values, which is why they are variables, because you want to change them to different variables or values depending on the problem. So solving an equation means finding the value of the variable, the letter, that makes the equation true. Solving an equation is a mechanical process. The idea is to get the variable on one side of the equal sign and the value of the variable, a number, on the other side of the equal sign. You can add or subtract any number on each side of the equal sign, or you can multiply or divide each side of the equation by the same non-zero number. Substitute your solution back into the equation to check that that solution is correct. Alright, so here we go. I'm looking. There's addition over here, there's no operations over here, but I can't add those together. I don't have letters on both sides, so I'm ready to fight to get x alone. And I look for addition or subtraction to undo first. They're adding 27, so I'm going to subtract 27. You use the opposite operation to get rid of things, to undo the math. That cancels, and that gives me x equals 48 minus 27, which is 21. Okay, on the second one, I'm looking, but there's no operations to do on either side that I can do. I don't have letters on both sides, so we're ready to get x alone by undoing this subtracting 47. We undo it subtracting 47 by adding 47, and that gives me x equals negative 63 plus 47, and you get negative 16. Oh, I think I did. Yeah, there's my calculator. Okay, you just type it exactly like you're reading it. Negative 63 plus 47 is negative 16. Okay, on this bottom one, they have y divided by 4. To undo dividing by 4, I need to multiply by 4. But the only rule is I have to do it to both sides. I mean, technically this is 4y divided by 4. In other words, the 4's cancel and y is alone. And 15 times 4 is 60. Okay, here they're multiplying the variable by 4, so to undo multiplication, I divide by 4, but I have to do it to both sides. So k equals 61 over 4. As a decimal, again, you never know how they're going to put their answer. As a decimal, it would be 15.25. If I enter it to see if I can reduce it, I can't. 61/4 is all I can do. If they want a mixed number, well, there's 15 whole, and you should just have memorized by now that 0.25 is a quarter. So it would be 15 1/4 as a mixed number, 15.25 as a decimal, 61/4 as a fraction. All three of those are correct answers. So you got to be on your toes on who knows which form they're going to leave their answer in. All right, so if we look at these, my animation isn't working very good. Alright, now I've got more than one thing happening to t. I still can't do any of the operations I see. There still aren't t's on both sides. So here's my letter. Now they're doing two things to them. They're multiplying by 5 and they're doing subtraction. And that's why I said, remember, when you're fighting, when you're trying to get the letter alone, you have to go in asymptotic order. So I can't divide by 5 first. Okay? The rule is you undo these things first. So the first thing I'm going to undo to t is they're subtracting 8.5. I'm going to add 8.5. That would give me 5t equals 54 plus 8.5 is 62.5. And now t is still not alone. They're multiplying by 5, so to undo that, I'm going to divide by 5, and I get t equals 12.5. Again, that'd be 12.5 as a mixed number. I didn't do math inner, but, well, it'd be 25 over 2. Okay? Now, on 2, this is pretty interesting. Again, if we're looking at getting rid of things in Asmodep order, they're doing two things to k. They're dividing and they're adding. Well, in order, I have to get rid of adding first. So I'm going to subtract 3.4. And I get k over 8 equals, nope, didn't. Negative 28 minus 3.4 would be negative 31.4. Alright, and then now I've got to undo the, they're dividing by 8, so I'm going to multiply by 8 on both sides. Multiplying by 8 cancels dividing by 8, and I get k equals I don't know why I did there. K equals negative 31.4 times 8. I get, what the heck did I do? I don't know really where this came from. I must have been very tired. Negative 31.4 times 8 is negative 251.2. Not really sure what I did there. Okay, now if you look at 3, again, remember I said you're going to look for operations on each side. I mean, there's subtraction and multiplying, but I can't do them. This is adding, but I can't do them. Now, the second step is, if you have x's on both sides, either this guy has to jump over the equal sign and go to that side, or this one needs to jump and go over to this side. I always pick the smaller one because that usually avoids negatives. So if I want to move, if x is going to jump over, he's got to change the sign to do so. So to move him to the other side, I'm going to subtract him off this side. But to keep it balanced, I have to subtract the same amount off of this side. That gets rid of him. Now he's jumped over, and I can combine the x's. 3x's take away 1x is 2x. Minus 4 equals 5. So then I'm going to add 4. Oops. Add 4. I get 2x equals 9. Divide by 2, and I get x equals 9 over 2, or 4.5, or 4.5. Again, you never know how they're going to put their answers. Alright, literal equations. A literal equation is an equation with two or more different variables. For instance, ax plus y equals c is a literal equation that can be solved for a, or x, or y, or c. So they gave me this problem, and they're telling me to solve it for x, which means I need to get x alone. My goal is to get this guy all alone by itself. Well, they're multiplying and adding. If we go Asmodep order, I've got to undo the adding before I undo the multiplying. So to undo adding y, I take away y. That gives me ax equals, you can't subtract a y from a c, so you just drop it. C minus y. That's how, drop it like it's hot. It's too hot to do the math, so you just drop it like it's hot. Alright, and now they're multiplying my x by a, so to undo that, I'm going to divide by a on both sides. Kills it. Gives me x. You can't divide c minus y divided by a, so you just leave it. C minus y over a is what x is equal to. Done. Alright, you got this one with mixed numbers, okay? People have different thoughts about this. Oh, I did get it right. Okay, people have different thoughts about what to do with mixed numbers. I turn them into improper fractions. So the first thing I'm going to do is go 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 8, so that's 8/3 n. Mixed numbers are nasty, okay? change them back to improper fractions. And again, now I can see to get my n alone, they're multiplying and adding. So I've got to undo the adding first. So I'm going to minus 31, minus 31. That's, that calculator thing on the other page was for this problem. And 31's cancel. I get 8/3 n equals, if I add those, I get negative 52. Now, to deal with this fraction, people teach this differently. You could just divide by 8/3. You could multiply both sides by the reciprocal, however you were taught. I hate fractions, so all I do is look, all this is saying is they're doing two operations. One, they're multiplying by 8. Two, they're dividing by 3. Both of those things are happening to my n. So I can undo them. I'm going to undo the dividing first. So to undo dividing by 3, I would multiply by 3. But I have to do it to both sides. When you take 3 divided by 3, it cancels, so all that's left now is 8n. And over here, if I do negative 52 times 3, I get negative 156. No more fraction. And now I can undo the multiply with divide, and I get n equals negative 19.5. Because a negative divided by a positive is a negative. No, there it is. I just forgot to take it off the other page. Okay, so there's where I typed it all. If they wanted it as a fraction, you could put it as negative 39 halves. Mixed number would be negative 19 and a half. Okay? Alright, you try this one, hit pause, come back when you're ready. And hopefully you got A. Alright, they want the value of s, which means I'm getting s alone. They're multiplying and adding. I've got to undo the addition first. So minus 2, 3s equals 6. Divide by 3, divide by 3, and s equals 2. Try this one. Hit pause. Come back when you're ready. And hopefully you got 7. It says Robert's age multiplied by 5 plus 6 equals 41. We don't know Robert's age, so let's call it R. Multiplied by 5 would be 5R. Plus 6 would be add 6. Equals is equals 41. And then we solve it for R. So to undo the addition first, I'm going to subtract 6. I get 5R equals 41 minus 6 is 35. Divide by 5. And I get R equals 7. Okay? Alright, so now we're just going to do some more practice. Practice, practice, practice. Alright, so there's my letter. The only thing they're doing is adding 9, so I'm going to subtract 9, and I get W equals 16. Okay, here, there's my X. So to undo adding 3, I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, and that gives me negative 21 equals X. They're multiplying by 3, so I'm going to divide by 3, and y equals 5. They're multiplying by 8, so I'm going to divide by 8, and I get z equals negative 28 over 8, which is negative 3.5. If you math and or enter it, you could also write it as negative 7 halves. Mixed number would be negative 3.5. Okay? For 5, I'm going to minus 7. They're doing two things. They're multiplying and adding. So I'm going to undo the adding first. Minus 7, minus 7. I get 30y equals 6. Divide by 30. Divide by 30. Y equals 6 over 30. Math enter it. Reduces down, enter it is 0.2. Math enter it. Reduces it to 1/5. So those are 3 equivalent answers. Okay. Number 6, you got letters on both sides. So the first thing I need to do is either make negative 5y go to this side or make 3y go to that side. Again, if you pick the smallest one, you'll avoid negatives. So to move negative 5y over, I'm going to change the sign. I'm going to add 5y to both sides. That gets rid of it over here. So now over here, I have a total of 8y's plus 8 equals 88. And now I can start fighting for the y, and I got to undo addition first with subtraction. That gives me 8y equals 80. Divide by 8, and y equals 10. Alright, 7, again, I've got v's on both sides, so the first thing I want to do is make one of the v's jump. I'm going to make the smallest one jump. So to get rid of minus v, I'm going to add v to both sides. That gives me 4v minus 9 equals 27. Now I can start fighting for v. I've got to undo the subtraction first by adding. That gives me 4v equals 36. To undo multiply by 4, I divide by 4, and I get v equals 9. Okay, number 8, again, we've got t's on both sides. The smallest one is a negative 5t, so I'm going to make him jump with a positive 5t to both sides. So that gives me 10 plus 2t equals negative 8. So now to get t alone, I got to undo this addition, so I'm going to subtract 10. That gives me 2t equals negative 18. Divide by 2, t equals negative 9. Alright, over here, they're multiplying and adding. I've got to undo the adding first, so I minus 3 minus 3. And that gives me negative 4.8 equals 3m. To undo multiplying by 3, I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. And I get m equals a negative 1.6. Okay. Alright. On this one, we've got n's on both sides. I'm going to make the smaller one jump with a plus 14n. That gives me 16n minus 6 equals 10. So I'm going to then get n alone. So I undo subtraction first with adding 6 to both sides. That gives me 16n equals 16. Divide by 16, and I get n equals 1. Okay, you got your w right there. They're subtracting 19 and multiplying by negative 6. So I've got to undo the subtraction first with addition. I get negative 6w equals, negative 37 plus 19. I get negative 18. Divide by negative 6, and I get w equals 3. On this one, I'm going to add 3. Add 3. I get 0.5s equals negative 11. To get s alone, I'm going to divide by 0.5. And s equals negative 22. Alright, 13. There's your letter. They're multiplying and adding. I got to undo adding first with subtracting. Both sides, I get negative 7d equals negative 21. Divide by negative 7, and d equals positive 3. Okay, on this one, we're going to minus 6 from both sides. That gives me 4g equals 2. Divide by 4, and y equals 1/2 if I reduce. Okay, on this one, we've got to undo subtraction first, so I'm going to add 3. I get negative 2k equals 5. Divide by negative 2, and k equals negative 2.5, or negative 2.5, or negative 5/2, depending on how they write their answer. Alright, so now we got some literal equations. They say solve each equation, check your answer. They want me to solve this for x, which means I've got to get x alone. Well, they're multiplying and adding, so I'm going to undo the adding first. So minus y minus y. I get 2x equals c minus y. Divide by 2, and that's what x equals. But be careful here. I would just leave it like this, but your author's a jerk. So he might write it as, this is saying the same thing as c divided by 2 minus y divided by 2. That's a possibility. They could say x equals 1/2 c minus 1/2 y. Okay, so just beware, they can write this several different ways. Alright, number 17, they want me to solve this thing for k. Okay, so for k, there's my k. They are adding an m and multiplying by -3. I got to undo addition first, so I'm going to minus m from both sides. That gives me -3k equals p minus m. Divide by -3, and I get k equals p minus m over -3. Now again, be careful. My guess is one of two things is going to happen. The author typically does this. Instead of putting the negative on the bottom, he just puts it in the middle. That's one possibility. Or he could just change everybody's sign and say, well, if I change p to a negative, then I could change m to a positive and -3 to a +3. You might also see it like this. Okay. 18, they want me to solve for x. Well, there's my x. They're multiplying by a negative and adding y. I got to undo adding first, so I subtract y. That gives me -x equals z minus y. And again, you're going, but x is alone. Nah, you can't leave a negative. That's like a -1 touching it. So to get rid of the negative, I'm going to divide everything by -1. And I get x equals -z plus y. Okay. And 19, they want me to solve this thing for k. Well, there's my k. I've got to undo subtraction first, so I'm going to add 2y. I get 3k equals 2y minus r. You could put -r plus 2y, doesn't matter. Divide by 3, and k equals 2y minus r over 3. Or 2/3 y minus 1/3 r. Or 2y over 3 minus r over 3. So either way. Alright, fractions. When you have fractions, guys, don't freak out. You can kill them. All you got to do is think of a fraction as two operations. It's a multiply and divide problem. So get rid of the division first, and then divide by the top. But again, in PEMDAS order, the first thing I need to get rid of is the addition. So I'm going to subtract 12. That gives me 2/3 x equals, what is that, 16? Yeah. Okay, now again, you could divide by 2/3, you could multiply by the reciprocal. Those are all legitimate techniques. But if you hate fractions as much as I do, just kill it one at a time. Kill the bottom first. You kill dividing by 3 using multiply by 3, but you got to do it to both sides. 3 divided by 3 is 1, which leaves 2x. 16 times 3 is 48. No more fraction. And now, one more step to get x alone, which is divide by 2, and I get x equals 24. Alright, on this one, again, I hate mixed numbers, so I'm going to change it into an improper fraction. 1 times 7 is 7, plus 1 is 8, over 7y. Minus 9 equals 27. Okay, I've got to get rid of the subtraction first, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides. That gives me 8/7 y equals 27 plus 9, which is 36. And again, to get rid of that fraction, I'm going to do the denominator first. To undo dividing by 7, I'm going to multiply by 7 on both sides. That gives me 8y equals 252. Divide by 8, and you get, oh dang, I didn't use a calculator, and you get 252 divided by 8 is 31.5, or 31.5, or what else I do? Oh, if you reduce this down, you'll get 63 over 2. Alright, on this one again, let's undo the subtraction first. So I'm going to add 11 to both sides. That gives me 1/8 k equals 32. Right? Where am I? Yeah, 32. And now I'm going to undo the division by 8 by multiplying by 8, and I get k equals 256. Alright, again, I hate mixed numbers, so I'm going to go 1 times 8 is 8, plus 3 is 11 over 8. A plus 1/4 equals 7/8. Now, you've got more than one fraction here. On the other problems, only one fraction was involved. Alright, on this, we've got 3 fractions, 2 8s, and a 4. All you got to do is take the numbers and multiply them together, but you don't need both 8s. Like if you have 2 8s, it doesn't matter. The denominators are 8s and 4s. So what I'm going to multiply through by is 8 times 4, which is 32. Again, I'm undoing this division with a common factor. Not common factor, yeah, well, you know what I mean. Multiple. So, what you do is you say, look, instead of multiplying and then dividing, I'm going to divide and then multiply by 11. What's 32 divided by 8? 4. 4 times 11a would be 44a. Okay? 32 divided by 4 is 8, times 1 is 8. 32 divided by 8 is 4, times 7 is 28. No more fractions. Okay? So now you can fight and get a alone. I'm going to minus 8. I get 44a equals 20. Divide by 44. And I get a equals 0.45 repeating, which if you math enter that, you get 5/11. Okay. Alright, 24. I don't have any mixed numbers. My different denominators are 5 and 7, which make 35. So I'm going to multiply everything through by 35. But instead of multiplying first and then dividing, I'm going to divide first and then multiply. So 5 goes into 35 7 times 2b would be 14b. 7 goes into 35 5 times positive 3 is positive 15. Equals 5 goes into 35 7. 7 times 11 is 77. No more fractions. So to fight for b, I'm going to minus 15. 14b equals 62. Divide by 14, and I get b equals 4.42, blah, 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 blah. Or I can math enter it and say b equals 31 over 7, because it will reduce it, right? And I don't know what that would be as a mixed number. Alright, so 25, again, we've got the same two denominators, 7s and 5s, so I'm going to multiply by 35. But I'm going to divide first. 7 goes into 35 5 times. 5 times 3t is 15t. 5 goes into 35 7 times positive 4 is positive 28. And 7 goes into 35 5 times 6 is 30. So, to get t alone, I'm going to minus 28. I get 15t equals 2. Divide by 15, and t equals 2/15, or 0.1333 repeated. Okay? Alright. Jim's weekly pay is half Carl's weekly pay. If Carl is paid $225 a week, how much is Jim paid a week? Well, Jim gets paid half of Carl's weekly salary, which is $225. So if I take half of $225, I get $112.5. 27, Henry hit 60 home runs. Ken hit a third fewer home runs than Henry, plus 30. How many home runs did Ken hit? Well, Ken hit a third fewer, so he did a third of what Ken did, and that's fewer than what Ken did. Then he had 30 more, so there's my equation. Alright? So if I do this multiplying, 60 times 1/3, or basically, because this says 1/3 times 60 over 1, which is 60 over 3, which is 20. So I can rewrite this as 60 minus 20 plus 30, and that's going to give me 60 minus 20 is 40, plus 30 is 70. Okay, 28. What is the sum? That means they want me to add A and B up. But they don't give me A and B. They give me an equation with A in it, and they tell me a clue about B. Well, if I can figure out what A is, then I can just add 5 to it, and that would tell me B. So I'm going to solve this equation for A. So I'm going to minus 2. 6A equals 12. Divide by 6. A equals 2. And then it says B is 5 more than A. So B is 7. Now, they didn't just say find them, they said find the sum of them. So 2 plus 7 is 9. Okay? 29. What is 3 times the value of x if negative 4x minus 5 equals negative 15? Well, if I can figure out what x is, then all I have to do is multiply it by 3, and that will be my answer. So to figure out x, I'm going to solve this. So I'm going to add 5. Negative 4x equals negative 10. Divide by negative 4, and x equals 10 fourths, which reduces down to 5 halves, which is 2.5 as a decimal, or 2.5 as a mixed number. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it like this and say, well, if x is 2.5, then 3 times that. Okay, so 3 times that would be 7.5. Okay. Alright, 30. Julia runs 5 miles a day. Phil runs twice as far each day as Jillian, minus 5. How many miles does Phil run each day? Well, Phil runs twice as far as Julia, which is 2 times 5, minus 5 miles. Which means Phil only runs 5 miles too. Alright, you try this one, hit pause, come back when you're ready. Hopefully you got D. Alright, on this one, I've got 2 y's, but they're on the same side. They don't have to jump, because they're on the same side of the equal sign. If they don't jump, if they don't need to jump across the equal sign, you don't have to change signs. You just do the math. 5y take away 3y is 2y, plus 13 equals 26. Minus 13, 2y equals 13, divide by 2, and you get y equals 6.5. Okay? Alright, try this one, hit pause, come back when you're ready. And hopefully you got K. It says, given the 2 linear equations, what is the product of R and S? So they want me to take R times S. Well, I got to figure out what R is first. Well, they gave me an equation with R in it. Get it alone and you'll know what R is. I have to undo the the subtraction first with addition. That gives me 4R equals 22. Divide by 4, and you get R equals 11 halves. Okay, for S, I need to solve this. So I have 12 minus 2s equals 2. I'm going to undo adding 12, subtract 12. I get negative 2s equals negative 10. Divide by negative 2, and s equals positive 5. So if r is 11 halves, and s is 5 over 1, the product on top is going to be 11 times 5 is 55, and 2 times 1 is 2, and if I divide that out, I get 27.5. Alright, try this one, hit pause, come back when you're ready. And hopefully you got 21. It says Emily is half Mike's age plus 7. Emily is half of Mike's age plus 7. So to solve this, you just do the math. What's half of 28? Well, that's 14 plus 7 is 21 years old. Okay, try this one. Hit pause. Come back when you're ready. Hopefully you got negative 36. Alright, I've got h's on both sides and I've got numbers on both sides. I'm going to go ahead, I should get my letters together first, but I'm going to go ahead and move my constants together. So I'm going to add 5. I get 2/3 h equals h plus 12. Now, the problem is you're going to want to subtract 1h from both sides, and you hate fractions so much. So what you can do is undo that dividing right now. To undo dividing by 3, I would multiply by 3. The only rule is I have to do it to every term on both sides. So here the 3's would cancel and I'd have 2h. 3 times h is 3h. 12 times 3 is 36. No more fractions. Alright, so now I'm going to get h, I got to make this at h jump, so I'm going to minus 3h, minus 3h. I get negative 1h equals positive 36. Divide by negative 1 and h equals negative 36. Last one, hit pause, come back when you're ready. 23 computers. Alright, the equation 2225C minus 2000 equals P shows the profit P a company store makes selling C computers. How many computers must the store sell to make a profit of $49,175? They're telling you to change P to that number. They want to know when will this be equivalent to 49,175. So we solve it. I'm going to add 2,000. That gives me 2255C equals 51175. Divide by 2255, and I get C equals 23. Alright, and that will do it for day 9. So I will see you tomorrow for day 10.